Welcome everybody to the Cast from the Coast. My name is Adam Oz and I'm joined as always with Josh Lambert, Aaron Peerless, and Tim Johnson. What are we talking about tonight, Tim?
Very controversial, taboo movie in the annals of horror. We are going to talk about the 1980 film Cannibal Holocaust.
Stay tuned. All right, Tim, give us the synopsis on this movie.
Well, during a rescue mission into the Amazon rainforest, a professor stumbles across a lost film shot by a missing documentary crew.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, here we go. So,
What, that did sum it
no,
up?
no,
That didn't-
that's pretty good.
Oh, no,
that
that's
starts
all
that
this
starts
movie's
it.
about?
So I'm just going to preface this by saying, ladies and gentlemen, as you probably know, this is obviously, like Tim said, in the annals of horror. This is one of the most infamous movies ever made for many reasons, which we will get to in a few minutes. We had to watch this movie. I mean, I've seen it many times. Tim's seen it many times, but we introduced Josh and Aaron to this movie.
Do you want to know what I wish we would have
What's
thought
that?
in hindsight, Adam?
Not introducing it to us.
No.
Live reaction video.
A fucking reaction
Yeah, that would
video.
have been intriguing.
Oh,
That would have been amazing. You have those two playing like at the same time, and then me and Adam are like giggling, like, "Oh, this part's coming up. Watch."
You guys are
Well,
sick.
yeah.
You're sick.
Well, this is
twisted
going to be a good
pervert.
discussion tonight because this movie does divide the horror community quite a bit, because you've got the people that absolutely want the absolute shock factor of movies and the disgusting effects, and you got the people who just want a good horror movie, and you got people who don't really care either way or desensitized, kind of like me and Tim. We're sick fucks. So that's a disclaimer. That's all I had to say really about that. So I mean, you know, we had to watch a movie like this. This is the most disgusting movie that we've ever, done on the show. So it's kind of time to get there, I guess. So yes. So what we have is we have a documentary film crew that has an infamous backstory to them, that are basically a ragtag group of rebellious filmmakers, guerrilla filmmakers, that cause problems everywhere they go, and they stage shit. They end up going into the Green Inferno, otherwise known as the Amazon rainforest, with a guide, and they stir up trouble for the actual occupants in the rainforest, to the point where they become the next meal. Kind of fast forward, back up everything else in the movie, because it kind of jumps in timelines a little bit. We find the professor that's been sent to find out what happened to them, because they have not come back. And at this point, we don't know what's happened to them. We don't even know if they're alive or not, and plain and simple, they're told, well, there's a good chance if they aren't back yet, they ain't coming back, but let's go look for them anyway. And they head into the wilds, and they come across many different tribes, and kind of bed with a couple of them just to kind of get their input on what might have been going on and find out some stuff, and it gets a little more fucked as you go. Just a little bit and a little bit and a little bit. So, does that kind of put it into a good perspective, folks?
Yeah,
That sums up the
I,
story
I, I,
pretty
I
well.
agree.
Okay.
I agree. It's
All right.
good. It's good.
So the main character that we talk about in this movie here himself, we have a Professor Monroe, Harold Monroe. So this gentleman is kind of an expert. He's like an anthropologist and like an expert on like tribes and human nature and stuff like this by the looks of it. So he's kind of, what's that?
Anthropologist.
Yeah. So
Anthropologist.
he's been sent in there to try to find out what it is, and he's working very closely with a bunch of the groups of them. He has a couple of guides with him. Well, shit, what are their names? Chaco and I can't remember the other guy's name now, but he's interesting. But we also have the film creators themselves that we have to find out their actual, their what happened to them. So we have Faye Daniels, Jack Anders, Alan Yates, and there's one that I'm missing here. Mark or Mike, something like that. I can't remember his name. Yeah. Anything you guys would like to add?
Oh,
There's
there's
Go
tons of
on.
stuff, but
Maybe,
in,
maybe
Yeah,
a little
related
To
bit.
the characters in the story.
characters.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Somebody else, speak up.
So we do get to see like a character development arc of the four filmmakers. So we see them go into the jungle, and they're kind of cocky, Americans.
they're
They are.
assholes. They're
Well,
assholes.
not at first. I don't think not at first. They're just introduced as like these guerrilla film guys that have been through like Vietnam, and they did these amazing films and all this, and we see them then start to interact and kind of like stage stuff for their documentary. So things like burning down the village and creating like faux wars so they can film it and then be like, this is what's going on in the Amazon, and cut the fact that they're the ones that are causing it. And we see them develop into pretty shitty humans.
We do.
I felt there was very much, I don't know exactly what point it happened, but there was a point where I wanted them to get their comeuppance.
Oh.
Which I think is very good storytelling. You go from, geez, I hope they get through and not get eaten by cannibals, to at a certain point, you just look up and come to the realization, I hope these people get eaten by cannibals.
Yeah. They're definitely in deservance of it. So you're right. It starts off with them. I mean, they're just kind of cocky Americans at first. Like, we're not afraid of anything. We got this. Yay, go us. Go team. And then when they get in there and you start to see how they actually interact and disrespect the tribes that they come in contact with, you quickly kind of get an idea of what they're really up to. And it doesn't take long before you have no empathy or sympathy for them whatsoever, and you're just waiting for them to die because there's no way they're making it out of there alive. It's very much so made, known that on a good day, you're not going to survive in the fucking rainforest in the Green Inferno. Even with the best of support, you go in there looking for trouble, there's no fucking way you're coming out alive. Like, it's just the way that it is. Yeah. Tim, you said there was lots to say. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Um,
Shouldn't
I-
we? Yeah.
well, I see where Aaron's about to go. I see where.
Well, I mean, kind of like what we discussed earlier. I think that instead of blowing out all these, facts and everything, maybe Adam, you should ask.
All right,
to,
I see where this is going too. So, okay, so
Yeah.
I think we gotta do
tonight
things
we got to do
differently.
things a little bit differently
Yeah.
because one of the things that we discussed before we got into this episode was that it would be really, really difficult to go too far into discussion without kind of blowing a lid on the fact that there is a ton of infamous lore and history around this movie, which would all culminate into obviously a wonderful trivia time with Tim. So what we're going to do is we're actually, now that we've kind of had a little discussion about the story, let's just jump right into some trivia time. That way we can continue that discussion and then move on to the next segments that we have. So, ladies and gentlemen, I present to you trivia time with Tim!
Yeah.
I've been listening to a lot of Metallica lately, so James Hetfield's kind of coming out.
Nice.
So the amount of trivia for this movie could basically just be an episode. Like I could go on for an hour talking about this. So I'm going to go through a lot of it, but you know, obviously I can't talk about all of it because we have other segments of the show. But I can get a lot of the stuff out there and the ball rolling, so to speak. How do you pronounce the director's
Ruggero
name?
Deodato.
Ruggero. So I'm just going to refer to him
Go
as
ahead.
Ruggero because I don't want to fumble over his last name. So,
Rogue.
10 days after its premiere in Milan, the film was seized by Italian courts, and the director, Ruggero, was arrested and charged with obscenity. He was later charged with murdering several actors on camera and faced life in prison. The cast had signed contracts requiring them to disappear for a year after shooting to maintain the illusion that they died. Ruggero contracted Lucia Barbarici. Oh my God, I think I totally nailed that last name. And told him to have contact with the 3 other actors who played the missing film team. When the actors appeared in court alive and well, the murder charges were dropped. How fucked is that? And it's kind of weird because, you know, this is obviously, it was done in 1980, filmed in 79 and 80 or whatever. It's very much the same kind of you know, marketing strategy that the Blair Witch took however many years later, right? Because this is very much like, literally, it's one of the plot points, a found footage film.
Can we just talk about what an honor that would be as an effects artist? To be, not only was your effects so believable that someone got murder charges because of it.
It's impressive.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I'll go into a little bit of it later, but yeah, it has a lot to do with the fact that it was shot on film and it was not shot with a steady cam. It was a handheld camera, and the effects look way more real when you're shaking all around and you can't see things, right? So
yeah, and like, you know, the way that the film was kind of degraded and kind of, you know, grungy and all that, it hid a lot of the
absolutely
effects mistakes, or if anything, gave a little bit more, you know,
realism to the fact that this
and
actually
realism.
happened.
Yeah. The iconic poster of the film shows a cannibal girl impaled on a stick. In court, Ruggiero explained that girl sat on a bicycle seat attached to the pole's base while holding a small pointed piece of balsa wood out of her mouth. Fake blood was added afterwards. He commented that the girl was unusually calm and remained very still during filming. Again, a testament to special effects, where people thought we thought this was so real that we're going to talk about it in court. You know what I mean? Like,
I'm
that's
still not
up.
unconvinced that she didn't die. Like, I'm trying to picture someone sitting up on a bicycle seat, remaining perfectly still for 4 minutes or whatever that scene was.
I just always thought, because I had heard that too before, but I just always thought that they had mounted her on a bicycle seat in that position so that they could get the position to properly do a cast on her, and it was a fake body or something like this. But that's a realistic looking fake body, so no, they obviously filmed it and and like edited it in a very particular way.
On a positive note, this is the second highest grossing film in Japan in 1983, behind E.T. the Extraterrestrial.
E.T. and Cannibals.
Cannibal Holocaust. This is kind of cool. After seeing the film, director Sergio Leone wrote a letter to Ruggiero, which stated, "Dear Ruggiero, what a movie. The second part is a masterpiece of cinematography and realism, but everything seems so real. I think you are going to get in trouble with the whole world." Yeah.
Accurate.
Yep. Ruggiero said he based the film on a film he saw about a documentary crew who died while investigating cannibals in Africa. The documentary showing the incidents he depicted in the film was destroyed after its discovery. An Italian cable network claimed that it had a copy and was going to show it uncut, but it never showed the film. but confirmed that they had a copy of the original.
That kind of really plays into the story of this one, where they're trying to release it, and yeah, okay.
This alone, boys, and everybody that's tuning into this alone right here, I mean, take it as you will. It may spark your interest on this thing, but I'm telling you, if you're not used to seeing this kind of level, you are going to get PTSD from this. In some way, shape, or form, something could happen to you.
Noted.
Robert,
this was that potent. Yeah.
Robert Kurtman was a porn actor trying to establish himself in mainstream films. After this movie, legitimate roles dried up and he went back to porn. I'm going to butcher the last name, but I'm going to say it anyway. Perry Perkakin cried after filming the turtle scene.
Oh, Jack, yeah.
Ruggiero said he now regrets everything he did, especially the animal deaths. He said once that it was stupid for including the animals in the film in a way that he did.
So let's talk about that for a little bit. That's the elephant in the room.
Yep.
That's probably the biggest thing in the film that gets it the title of video nasty and infamy. There's a couple, they end the lives of living creatures, and you hear their final shrieks, and it is cold. Like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with
it. Is cold. Yeah, it is. Now, one of the things that kind of came out from years of digging into the lore behind this movie, and I don't know if it's part of the trivia or not, but they.
I don't know.
There's
a lot of
but it was discussed at one point that some of the tribes that they had worked with on the movie itself for its realism, they had killed the animals that they would eat for food anyway. So they killed the animals and then they ate the animals. So it's not that they just killed it for the sake of killing it. I mean, technically they killed them for the movie, but they would have been killed for food anyway. So it's one of those things.
Right. And as for carnivores, I mean, we talked about this before, like factory farming is disgusting and animals are abused every single day.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd be remiss if I didn't state that, like, animals die. It's an unfortunate part of our life, but it's our fault. We eat them. But something just unsettling about watching an animal's life be taken in such a gruesome manner with seemingly no respect. And again, factory farming, you eat your chicken nuggies and the chicken's head gets fucking blown off pretty well.
But it also wasn't just like a quick shot. Like it wasn't like they killed the turtle, cut its head off, and that was it. There was an entire 5-minute
like
scene of them taking the thing apart.
Gruesomely tore apart this turtle, and you see its liver and you see its organs, and
it's still moving in every shape and
music
form, right?
Which we'll talk about too. The music is a high point of this movie. Makes it even more unsettling when these scenes are going on too. All right, Tim, you got more?
Fuck yeah, I do. I got so much more. Immediately after the pig was shot and killed, Carl Gabriel York botched a long monologue that Ruggiero wanted to include in the movie. After rehearsing the lines several times and doing fine, York says he screwed up during the actual filming because he heard the pig squeal and die. Retakes weren't possible because they only had one pig allotted to be killed.
Fair enough.
So when we were talking before we were supposed to record this episode, I remember you guys talking about, like, you know, that turtle scene can't be real.
Well, the guys were,
like, every animal death in this was a real animal death.
I knew exactly every animal in that. I knew exactly. I knew the fact that there were no makeup lines, nothing. Josh.
So little background.
Yeah,
I watched this before Aaron.
Okay.
And me and Aaron have this kind of back and forth because my squinty little eyes don't see these fissure lines in the cast and where the hairline is on the wig and all these things. And I messaged to the group chat after seeing this turtle scene. I said, if Aaron points out that this was made of hot foam or shows some mold line on the turtle cast, I don't believe I can exist in this reality any longer, because I am 99.5% sure that that living turtle was just mangled on screen.
Yeah.
And you're right. When I witnessed I knew exactly that all the animals that were lined up in this, I knew exactly they were meeting their demise right in front of the camera. And I think there was 7 in total that I witnessed on there. And I think one of the most painful ones was the turtle, but the Cody at the beginning, it was a Cody. It's not a muskrat.
He says muskrat though, doesn't he?
It's a right, but it's wrong. It's a Cody. I looked at that, and it's not a muskrat, right? But like, just cut it. Just cut its throat. Don't stick it in the throat a little bit and let it scream. And like that to me is just brutal. I love animals, right? And I hated that. I absolutely hated every single animal killing here. And I'm a meat eater as well, right? And I think, a lot of people get disgusted and things over that, and that's why they don't watch films that have this kind of thing that are in it. And this is why Hollywood has said, no, we got to be, all the animals we have to have that they're all humanely, taken care of on set and things like that. Well, here's a prime example of that, right? Yeah.
It's just unsettling the way it's treated, and you can watch a video of like factory farming and a spike going through a cow's head. Like, that's what they do.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's just not the same for
No.
some reason.
I think the mix with cannibals and this whole thing, the way that it went, I think that's what really, and this is coming from an effects guy who's been doing this for quite a few years. I was very, oh my gosh, like, this is one of those movies that I will never watch again, but it was because it was done. I want to say it was done so well that it affected me like that, but I don't want to say that it was done well. It was done effectively to really give us the feeling in these.
It did what it was
film,
intended
right?
to do. Go ahead, Tim.
Right.
Go ahead,
I want
Tim.
to talk.
Go ahead.
I want to talk. No, Aaron, you. This movie was done well, but that's not condoning what they did in that movie. This movie was exactly. The whole point was to literally set out to make you ill. It was a shock movie, and it succeeded.
100%.
But at the same time, do you want to give praise to that? Yes, because that is what the filmmaker set out to do. I think, I've watched a lot of fucked up things on the internet. We were talking earlier, I think before we were filming, maybe during filming, about rotten.com and Orcish, all those kind of fucking weird taboo death sites and stuff like that. And I can say that turtle scene disturbed the fuck out of me.
Yeah.
Because they're in the water and you got them with the cameras and they just kind of throw this real poor animal, and then they're hacking it with the fucking axe, and it was like a spectacle just for the sake to shock you, and it's like, oh,
and it lasted forever.
Yeah, it was like forever. A 5-minute scene, and it was like I get people eating animals and stuff like that. I'm not gonna lie, I like chicken nuggets, but at the same time, it's like, dude, you're killing this. Oh my god, am I becoming a vegan now? That was happening.
Yeah.
But it was I feel that scene was done in very poor taste.
I think the animal scenes completely in these were done. I mean, I didn't want to. I hate seeing a movie where an animal gets hurt. Typically, it's not actually getting hurt, but in this one, they do, and they meet their demise right in front of the camera, right?
Like, there's some sort of realism that's attached to hearing the last sound that a creature makes before it then lives.
And including humans, man. I mean, when you're sitting there watching somebody pass, right? It's the same, and it's different to me with this film having practical effects that you have to mimic, where we do watch that stuff on rotten.com and things to get the coloration and to get things right for our films that we're creating, so we don't have to go and do that to an animal or a human, right? That was one part of the makeup effects thing that I, studying forensics books and things, that the first day that I was doing that, I was a little queasy. I knew that I had to do it for studying and for, learning the process. I never got sick or anything, but I had people in my class that were ill for days because they had to keep coming looking at these books, and they couldn't take it. They just couldn't do it.
It's a really interesting perspective. I never thought about that. But I guess if you're designing a head explosion and you want brain matter all over the floor, you kind of got to know what that looks like.
Right. And you look at forensics books and things like that too, right? Where this, I was like, oh man, whew, this is rowdy.
Like, this movie was not worth that poor turtle's life.
No.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
I agree, man.
The close-ups of its fucking...
The other thing you got to look at is on the Halloween set, I'm sure they had fucking salamis on the craft table. Like, what's the difference? I guess at the end of the day, the only difference is they filmed it.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, the scene, that's why it was shot.
Yeah.
Was the
100%.
Make us.
And that's only one animal though.
Yeah, that's only
one scene. And they're hacking the head off the top of a monkey, and we haven't even gotten to that part.
I know. Okay, there's still more.
All right, let's go with the trivia, because we're kind of really going high and long on this one.
Okay, in 2005, an interview with Carl Gabriel York said that while he was rehearsing the sex scene with Francesca Cardi, she suggested that, fuck it, let's just go out in the middle of the jungle and actually do it. York declined, saying that he had a girlfriend back in New York. In 2009, Francesca stated that the sex scenes were not simulated, that she and York actually were lovers off screen during filming.
This is another aspect of this film. In all honesty, I'm watching it and rethinking about it. I can't determine what was staged and what was actual.
Yeah.
Like,
exactly.
I 100% believe that they're banging in that film. I 100% believe that those tribespeople in that burning cabin were there.
In that cabin
no
burning.
PPE as they're burning down a fucking banana leaf tent thing.
Yeah. I agree with you. I do.
And I think that's why this film has such notoriety, because you watch it, and even decades later, 40 years later, you still don't know what happened. What is the story of this film?
What's going on?
Well, there are entire books that were written on infamous horror movies that have this shit in it. So.
Oh, absolutely. This movie's so fucked. Ruggiero intended for the natives to eat fake monkey brains from a fake monkey head, but the natives talked him out of it because monkey brains were a delicacy to them. When the professor bathed naked in the river, the woman in the scene was hired from a local brothel.
The kid was grabbing his junk.
Yep.
Grabbing his wang, yeah. I was like,
his wang. In the film, nope, that's not what I wanted. The production team could not find any local women to play the adulteress. Head of wardrobe, Lucia Constantini, ended up being the one with the part. She was completely covered in mud to look like a native. The film has 6 unofficial sequels.
Oh, 6! Did not know that. I knew of like 2.
6. Yeah, I didn't even know that I didn't know that there were 6. Back to the animal deaths. The animal deaths in this movie were 100% real. The list of dead animals include a yellow-spotted river turtle, a snake, a tarantula, a young pig, 2 squirrel monkeys, and a Cody,
yeah.
The monkey killing scene was shot twice, so 2 monkeys were killed for that scene. The dead animals were given to the tribes for food. That's fucked. When the professor meets the shaman's son for the first time, the boy has a symbol tattooed on his nape. The same symbol can be seen on a truck passing by at the very last scene, right after the professor says, "I wonder who the real
Yeah,
cannibals
it's a
are."
big green one in the circle on the truck as it's going by on the street. Yeah.
Wow.
To create the Last Road to Hell sequence, Ruggiero watched hours of execution footage. He later claimed that some of the footage he watched showed up in the Faces of Death videos, and and that he rejected it because it seemed fake. The original title of the film was supposed to be The Green Inferno, but it was changed last minute to its current title, Cannibal Holocaust. Considered that it was more shocking, especially with the word Holocaust. Eli Roth would later make a cannibal-themed horror title named Green Inferno, which is an intentional homage to this film.
I think it's a better title, honestly.
What, The Green Inferno?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't really get the Cannibal Holocaust. I never did.
Well, it's like
it's just shock value. It's like what's worse than the Holocaust, I guess, is what he's going for. But yeah.
After filming the sex scene between Carl and Francesca, due to several takes of the scene, one of the natives congratulated York for his resistance, believing that they were really having sex.
Fair.
Filmmakers, yeah.
That's another thing. So, like, a large portion of the people in the background of this film are legitimate tribes.
Yep.
Like, they're natives.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I think that also adds to the fact that, like, the aesthetic of the film, these are real fucking people in the background living their lives, and you guys are fictionalizing, you know.
I'm sure there was direction given. Like, don't get me wrong, they're actors in a sense, but
yeah.
All right. How about a couple more pieces, Tim, and then we're going to move on to the next segment.
Oh, you cut me off?
We got to move on.
I'm just kidding. Okay. This will be the last one because it's kind of a big one. Okay. During the interview in 2015, Mimi Lay and Francesca were asked if they had difficulty performing the full nudity that was demanded for their roles. Mimi said, well, she was very shy, but the crew was very nice, and so were the actors. Everyone was so good about it. I think we did two versions of the cannibal. One which was nude, and one they were covered up with something like a monkey suit. I was very uneasy at first, but I was treated with such great respect that I wasn't gaped at. Francesca said, I felt uncomfortable, not so much with the issue of nudity, but how the director Ruggiero filmed the nude scenes. This bothered me very much because I felt like I was being asked to do something I didn't want to do. But in the end, he was right. Looking at the film 30 years later, this is how it needed to be filmed.
So that goes to say something else that I read. The guy, questionable morals, obviously, but he did things intentionally to make the crew uncomfortable, to get better shots out of them. Withholding paychecks, yelling at them, just doing things to generally amp them up. I think he even read somewheres that after one of the animal deaths and one of the actors were crying, he filmed them and used that as one of the reactions when they're crying later on in the film.
Wow.
I do have one more piece. One more. This is considered to be the goriest film ever made by the critical community, that is us, the horror community. Even more gory than Suspiria, Day of the Dead, Faces of Death, The Wizard of Gore, and the Human Centipede first sequence.
What about Dead Alive?
That's bloodiest movie.
So,
yeah.
Here's my thing with the gore rating. Can you get more gory
than real gore?
Literally organs being put up in like this. Like, Buddy's got like a cow liver and a bunch of intestines, probably from a pig or something, when he's like ripping through the corpse.
The gore factor can only be increased by how it's presented and displayed, and in an abundance at that point.
Yeah. and
the amount
it
of
also
screen
goes,
time that
and it goes to it goes to say the context in which it's shown. I mean, you look at Day of the Dead zombie movie, Faces of Death, Wizard of Gore, Human Centipede, like, you know that this stuff is not real. It's special effects wizards doing their magic, right? But with this, you're literally watching a turtle get ripped apart. Do you know what I mean? You can't compete with that because that is real gore. That is real visceral fucking shit coming out of these dead animals' bodies. You can't, like, Human Centipede. Shut up.
It's not even gory. Whatever.
I don't agree with that. Yeah.
But same with Suspiria. Fuck that movie.
Okay. Well,
overrated. Anyways, but with that being said, I think what this movie has over all those other gory ones is the context and how it was filmed and the fact that it was real.
Absolutely.
Robert Englund here, a.k.a. Freddy Krueger. I'm watching and listening. They cast from the coast. You better or else.
Well, that was a very, very, very interesting and informative nonetheless. Trivia time with Tim.
I feel like that last comment you just made was very condescending.
It was truthful. It was very informative because it did. It told us a lot about the behind the scenes and what it was. It did inform us, Tim. You did a great job. I want to hear Josh's notes. Stuff.
This is a doozy. My first viewing of Cannibal Holocaust took place January 3rd, 2021 at 8:47 p.m. My first note was this is a pretty infamous film. I honestly have my doubts it will meet up to its reputation. The bowl cut on the tribesmen is pretty hysterical. They all have like Beatles wigs.
Yesterday.
The blowgun poison dart trope. I don't think those really exist. Can't help but think using a shaman's son as a pack mule is a pretty bad idea. So, at one point, they quote that there's no piranhas in this river. And at this point, I said, there better be piranhas later on. You don't line up a piranhas thing without following through. That's poor foreshadowing.
Did you read that little tidbit there, Josh, about that? They didn't have an underwater camera. They were going to use that, and they had.
Oh, they were going to do something.
They were
going to
do something. Yeah, and the camera that was supposed to be sealed up or something, it was leaking or whatever, so they had to scratch that part of the whole film.
I thought it was weird because they said it like it was foreshadowing, like there was clearly going to be a piranha scene.
It's something around those lines. I could have my stats wrong, but I know it's something around that. They wanted to shoot the underwater scenes, and they didn't have an underwater camera capable to do that right at that time.
Just kind of did leeches instead.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably would have been the scene, right, where the leeches where he would have got bit by a piranha.
Yeah.
Muskrat stomach and cocaine. That's what's for lunch. What the fuck was that? Mud rape ritual. So that scene was pretty fucked, but then they stopped the guy from interrupting it just so he can fire off a warning shot and interrupt.
No, he didn't interrupt it. He
waited.
So once again, that let the guy finish, and then fire off the warning shot, the guy would take off to his tribe and they would follow him.
Right. So if they interrupted him, wouldn't he also run off and go back to his tribe?
Maybe.
Just seemed fucked.
Maybe.
Didn't they say something about her being adulterous or something, and that's why she was?
Yeah,
taken
like
and raped
Yeah.
with. Yeah.
A trough full of marshmallow fluff. These tribesmen really know how to live. What was that?
That
It
that
looked like
is
marshmallow
an
fluff.
actual thing. I've seen a documentary with them doing that before. There are certain tribes that, like in New Guinea and
Yeah.
in the Amazon and shit list, it's almost like a dough that they make that they use their mouths to like knead it basically, and it's like a soupy dough. Yeah.
Looked like marshmallow fluff. I just like to think we're all making fluffernutter sandwiches.
Fluffernutter.
Why are all the women they're raping clearly white? They're like in the middle of the Amazon, and there's not a white person to be found other than like the 4 people. And it seems like all the ones that are getting raped are like clearly white women. And we talked about this in trivia later that they like hired she was a foreign actress or whatever, and they muddied her up. That made sense. There's a whole lot of floppy birds in this film.
A
dongs.
lot of penis.
Yeah.
Floppy birds.
This buddy straight up ate some raw liver. They had like a cow liver or something and handed it to him, and he took a big old chunk out of it. We enter the found footage mode. Quote, "My son was a son of a bitch." I hate to break this to you, bro, but you just called yourself a bitch. You got played.
You played yourself.
Yeah. This is the point where I said, "Is that a real turtle?" And then I said, "Okay, this is definitely a real turtle. It's twitching." If Aaron tells me this is some sort of animatronic and points out the seam lines and the fact that it might be a gelatin mold or hot foam, I think I might lose all concept of reality.
It was real, Josh. It was definitely real.
Do you feel better about it that it was real, or do you kind of wish that it was?
I don't know if I feel better or worse, honestly.
See, that's what we should be talking about.
The real question.
Tell us how you feel,
the
Josh.
real one.
So,
Let's peel
Faye-
back the layers.
Faye filmed literal human atrocities in her other documentaries, but she's scared of fucking spiders. She's freaking out over this tarantula when she could have just like
Hey,
fucking flung
People
her.
have their fucking things that they're scared
But
of.
the
man.
other,
She watched a firing squad and
Yeah.
filmed it.
she also
It's true.
This is not normal
Yeah,
people.
but it's
saying.
one thing to have something happen to somebody else and then something happening to her. She was scared for her life. That talks about the selfish asshole nature of this person too. I don't give a shit what happens to these assholes, but oh my gosh, I might die because there's a tarantula on me.
Tarantulas aren't even that poisonous in comparison to everything in that fucking jungle. No big deal. Just brush her off. Holy fuck, they're amputating his leg. And then my next note was, "Oh, your amateur surgery didn't work. Big fucking surprise."
Yeah.
These guys are straight up dicks. They're scaring pigs, or they're shooting pigs, scaring the tribes. Serves them fucking right.
I hope they die.
They're literally, I think that was probably the point. That must have been the turning point where I said, okay, these guys are dicks. They're literally burning down a village. And again, I'm pretty sure that was an already existing structure. Adam said that he read somewhere that they had them build that ahead of time. But to me, that looked like it had grime. I don't think that was like their village, but I feel like that structure's been there a while.
I mean,
and they straight up burned it down with the fucking extras inside of it. They're like, okay, yeah, you just stay there.
We'll tell you when to come out.
Right? Nothing gets these two hot and bothered like genocide. They're just fucking going at it like fucking
It's an
rabbits.
awkward sex scene for many
In front of
reasons.
a crowd.
Yeah. They got the jungle jollies I wrote.
Wow.
They
Don't
chop
ever change,
dick
Josh.
straight off.
Don't ever change.
What was that last
Just
one?
fire a couple flare guns into the woods. That will solve everything. The soundtrack really helps make you feel uncomfortable in these scenes. And that's something we touched on a little bit, but the soundtrack is honestly amazing in this film. Take it how you want. Like, the film is very disturbing, but the soundtrack does nothing but help it.
Yep.
I love how the executives are squirming in their like fancy leather chairs, and it's kind of like a reflection of the audience at this point. It's like, yeah, this movie is fucking vile, and like this is a representation of us watching it. And then the last quote, "I wonder who the cannibals are," and all I can think are they're the ones that eat the fucking people, bud. Like all those people we just watched eating people, those were the cannibals.
That's the definition of cannibal.
Yeah. And my last note here is a little blurb, my wrapping thoughts. It's been banned in over 50 countries. It's a notorious video nasty. It's uncomfortable to watch, and the soundtrack is strange and unconnected, but somehow adds to make it more uncomfortable. The story itself is amazing. The four crew are despicable humans, and you quickly change from rooting for them to rooting against them. You definitely have to be in a very particular mood. And truthfully, it's very much so a watch it once for me, but honestly unsure of how to rate this. On a gore level, how can you top real life gore? Literal, visceral gore. On a horror level, if you weren't horrified while watching this, there might be something legitimately wrong with you.
Amen.
Well put. Well put.
And when you think back at it, most of the animal deaths happened from the film crew going into the... Right there were the ones that killed the pig, killed the turtle, killed the Cody, killed the... killed the snake, killed the... Yep. Crazy. Yeah. So who is the real cannibals in this?
People that eat the people.
Right.
Aaron, why don't you talk about some effects work for us?
Okay, I'm going to go through this pretty quick because we're dragging this one on, but it deserves the time that we're putting into this because, my very first note that I have in this, it says, music seems unassuming. That's exactly what Josh had mentioned like 4 times in his review there. I totally agree with this 100%. The initial cannibal scene with the actual hand and the arm where they're chewing the meat off the fingers and the radius and the ulna or whatever there, that looked pretty real, besides the fact that the bones were like bleached white, which they'd be a little more pink or red or whatever. So
yeah,
I had
if
a little
they were
bit
fresh, yeah.
Yeah. So the way that this movie was affecting me, I had a little bit of a, okay, all right. Not that I wanted that to be real, because I absolutely didn't, but
it allowed you to get a grasp on reality.
Right. For just a split second, right? It still looked really real. And as someone who's just watching this film, they're going to think that that's absolutely 100% real, right? I mean, that was some meat on a fake skeleton, right? Like just, ugh. The poison bloodletting scene was well done with the knife and the blood tubing around the guy's toe, got bit by the snake. Anybody realize that snake looked like a python?
Yeah, it looked like a boa or a python
snake?
instead. Yeah, it didn't look poisonous.
Yeah, so I don't... Right. Decent fake skeleton find when the guide trips and falls and the skeleton kind of comes up out of the leaves and stuff like that. I thought that what they had done there was really good with that skeleton. The only thing that didn't sell it for me was the fact that the teeth looked like they were kind of fused together, and they were all the same. Everything was the same color. There was no shine to them or anything. I mean, even if it's been decomposing for a while, your teeth are still like porcelain, right? They're still going to have a little shine to them, and they're not going to be blended in with the same color bone and things like that. So that was another little thing that kind of affected me, where I was like, okay, that's making me feel a little better over this whole thing. Disgusting Cody kill when they're, kind of slowly putting the knife into its throat, and then they switch the sides and the thing's just screaming like that right there. Just my heart just fell. I was like, I don't know if I can watch the rest of this. Traumatizing punishment for adultery, absolutely disgusting. And you got to wonder what that tribesman, was that her wife or her husband, and then he was tasked to go and kill her because she was cheating on him. And shoving a log up her, you know what I mean? Like
her anus?
Yeah. But I mean, that was just, that lasted for a while too, right? You had blood going, and then he's making a mud ball and putting something up inside her. And I mean, oh my gosh, like I'm like, I don't think I can, like, legitimately didn't think I could continue on, but I wanted to for this review and things. The Tribe seems okay so far. I don't know why I have that note there. Cutting a woman open with a stone club, really just smearing fake blood, or real blood if they didn't have fake blood. They could be using pig blood or whatever. They were just smearing the fake blood over her chest and making it look like they were kind of cutting into her. It was effective. The sexual assault rape scenes are absolutely horrific. Well, isn't this a fun scene in the river? A bunch of tribesmen grabbing your junk, or tribeswomen grabbing your junk. Sacrificial altar with the camera and the bones and the skeletons. So when they finally find the bits and pieces of the film crew, and you see the camera kind of stripped down, you see the cans of film and things like that. Again, they had bits and pieces of meat hanging off. The skeleton was whitewashed, like it was just a fake skeleton, obviously, but they needed to use some ink or something, and with some umber, and just make it dirty or bloody. Mix a couple of the cranberry colors and things in there to make it look like it's been stripped of the meat. It had probably been sitting there for a while, but it still would have been gruesome. For that matter, it would have been, and in between the vertebrae, you can see that the rubber, what do you call it? The discs. You see the discs in between there, and they were super clean, and they look like silicone.
Vertebrae?
Well, the vertebrae is the bone, but the discs that are in between that allow you to bend.
The spongy parts.
Yeah. You can see that those are the silicone parts from a medical skeleton or whatever they did. And thank goodness they did use a good quality skeleton. It was just that it needed to be colored down a little bit. The human barbecue spit looks real. The lungs and stomach looked real, perhaps from a pig or other animal. Going back to Day of the Dead, Tom Savini, they used pig guts and things like that for the scenes in that show. So they're very effective, and I'm not quite sure if that actor did chew down on some liver or whatever, or if he was. You could see he was like, the camera was very low, and when all the innards were kind of brought up, he could have had something underneath and shoving it in his mouth as they were doing that. But he kind of reacted to it like he actually took a bite of it. So, again, this is the same thing that Josh, you were saying.
Based on what we know
questioning it,
of
right?
how this film was made, I think there was very little camera trickery.
I agree with you. I agree. Why not just do it and live with the repercussions or whatever? The execution footage, that looked real to me as well. All the footage of everybody getting shot, that looked absolutely 100% real to me. And I don't know if that was real
from some documentaries.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
again, he said, and I said in the whatchamacallit, he watched like hours and hours and hours of like executions and stuff. So I mean, I don't think it would be really that hard to kind of emulate that.
Yeah.
And take cues from what a real execution would look like. You know what I mean? But I mean, at this point, it could be.
But he managed to get a different feel on those clips too, right?
Yeah,
like, when it switched to those clips, it felt like it was in a different area, different part of the world, and you know what I mean? Like, so that was pretty from things that I've seen on certain websites and things too. That looked absolutely 100% real. The turtle scene was not cool. It was absolutely disgusting. I got poor turtle written here. This movie is fucked. That's what I have here. Felipe death looked real with the severed leg, and then he just dies like 2 minutes later. Must have bled out. Monkey death was disgusting. We haven't talked much about that, and you know what? Like little spider monkey, you take it and you hack the top of its head off and suck its brains out while it's still fucking moving and shit. Like, okay, I can't believe I made it this far. Again, the soundtrack is messed right up. It goes exactly with the way that this film flows. It's got that same, 4 or 5 notes that they play in that, and it's and it's just like, okay, there's no real symphonic thing to it. It's just somebody sitting there doing those 4 or 5 notes. Let's go shoot a documentary and murder a tribe. That sounds like fun. Old woman dying on the river edge looked gnarly. But what she was what was she dying from? Was it a disease? It looked like she had some sort of disease
some
or something.
sort of jungle disease.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Mix that with the, like dehydration and shit picking at her, and and
Right.
over sun and not sanitary conditions,
so,
and she was like peeling and shit.
Infection.
Yeah, it was whatever they did. I at that point I was so messed up in the head. I was like, I don't even know what they've done here. Did they just smear her with guts, cut up guts and everything? Because that's what it looked like.
She might have just been a tribeswoman who had a fucking jungle disease, and she's like, go sit over here for 10 minutes.
Right. Another disturbing part, and I hate to bring it up, but I got to because it's freaking disgusting. It was the birth scene. I found that very horrible. And then burying the fetus and then stoning the mother by bashing her head in. Oh my gosh. I got lovely written here. Yet another sexual assault scene. Girl on a spike was very convincing, almost too convincing. But that was a really good effect. It sold it. I don't know how she stayed that still. Because I was looking for her moving, swaying a little bit or whatever, and I had to back that part up because I couldn't understand why she was sitting so still, and she looked like she was actually impaled and hanging from the actual dowel that was in the ground. Right? It looked like her body was actually hanging, like because she was stuck up on the dowel. Right? So that was very convincing. Jack got messed up. And his member that gets cut off looked real as well.
His penis?
Yeah, man, they whacked the wang right off, and then I think the guy
he was like chewing on it as he was running away with it.
Right, and he's running away with it. Yeah. Hacking up Jack's body could have been it could have been a pig torso, where they have
it looked.
some sort of,
right.
Yeah.
The skin looked very reminiscent to pig skin.
That's what I thought it was. Maybe they just got a carcass or something and they filled it, or they just said, don't, take the guts out of it. Just let us, So that looked, they put some clothes on it and then they start hacking it up. And what do you get? You get what's ever inside, right? I wonder, and then I ended it with the same thing that you ended with. I wonder who the real cannibals are. Is it us? The people who
we're the ultimate consumer,
right?
Consume this,
or the people that are out in the middle of a jungle somewhere trying to survive, and Anyway, that was a rough one to get through.
It's a rough one, but you did good, Aaron. You did good.
Thank you.
All right, gentlemen. If that's the case, then it's time for us to give our final thoughts on this movie and then rate it. So I'm going to start tonight with Mr. Johnson.
Me? Cannibal Holocaust.
Wow.
Say what I like about it. It was very well written. I thought the plot was really, really well written, and considering that the majority of the violence doesn't happen till later, and that's pretty much why people are watching this or curious about watching this. It definitely had like a plot progression. But the focus of this whole movie was to make you sick. And I dig that. I watch a lot of horror movies, as you guys may or may not know. And horror movies don't scare me anymore, and they haven't scared me. They haven't elicited any type of like ill response. I watch horror movies to get excited and love the killers and have a break from my otherwise pretty normal day. This movie kind of fucked with me the first time I watched it, and the time that I watched it now. That turtle scene always got me. Always got me. Yeah, it got me. But what I can say is that this is definitely a precursor to the whole found footage, subset of movies. This was one of the first. I don't think it was the first, but I think it's one of the first, and it's very meta. The lengths that Rodrigo went for this, having the actors disappear for a year to lend to the authenticity that this is real and all this is kind of unheard of, especially back in 1980. What special effects were in it were pretty good. Like Josh mentioned earlier, I had a hard time not thinking that woman on the stake was not real. Like it definitely looked pretty legit. The special effects that were in it that weren't really killing animals were pretty good. The music, I like the music. But it's I've watched this a couple movies. I don't think I'll watch this movie ever again. It's kind of if you're curious, watch it. If you love it, there's something wrong with you, I think. Because this movie made me sick, and for that, I'm very conflicted about the rating because every fiber of my being wants to rate it like just a G, because it's if they killed animals in this for whatever reason and all that, but at the same time, like, this movie made me sick, so like it should really get like an R and an X. Do you know what I mean? So I'm very conflicted, but I think what I'll do is I'll rate this movie a PG, based on the fact that this movie did what it was supposed to do to its audience, and me being part of that audience, it made me sick. It kind of shocked me, but I will never fucking watch it again, because this movie's pretty sick and kind of disgusting, and kind of like senseless, and I don't know. There was just like an unthoughtfulness to this movie. Like, yeah, let's kill animals on screen. That'll scare people. You know what I mean? So, I'll give it a. No. You know what? I'm gonna give it a G. I'm gonna give it a G.
Changing it to a
It gets
G.
a G.
Okay.
It was good. Yep. It was good.
Okay. Let's, Mr. Peerless, let's get your thoughts out.
Yep. Well, I share the same sentiments as what Tim has said. He basically took the words right out of my mouth for exactly how my thoughts go for this.
Sorry, bud.
No, please don't. I don't have to talk as much, so which is good, because I'm still got flashbacks of this movie going on through my head right now. I think what I would do is I would put out a warning to people that if they're going to watch this, then have a strong stomach, heed what you read or what you hear from us on here.
Don't eat your supper while watching this.
No, this is not a supper movie, definitely. And you know what? If you're any way, shape, or form, you can't take animal abuse, then don't watch this. You're going to be, you'll be messed up. You will be messed up. It's just like somebody that has never seen anything on one of these nasty websites that actually show death and things like that.
Yeah.
Once you see it, you can't unsee it. And in this movie, this movie it had those qualities to it. Is it a bad movie? I'm just as conflicted, man. For a movie like this to do this kind of thing to me, obviously, you're right, Tim. It had to be some sort of there has to be something there that has done this to me, that has affected me, where I don't want to watch it again, but I did watch it, but I'll never forget it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I never want to be that.
I know exactly what you mean.
I never want to be those people on that screen doing that to animals or things like that, right? Unless I absolutely have to survive, right? And because of that, I think that's everything I wanted to say about this, but I was thinking about it yesterday, and I was thinking about what I was going to say and things, but I'm giving it a G as well, just because it's not terrible, but it has definite terrible parts to it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Josh, the soundtrack was awesome. Very, very unnerving, I guess is the word. And it just added to it. And yeah, so I give it a G, but I am very hesitant about recommending it at all in any shape or form.
entirely understood. Josh, go ahead.
Again, this is the ultimate struggle of what do you rate this film? So, vile things were done in this film, and we've talked a lot about the animal violence, and I can honestly get past that because again, the craft table of fucking Ferris Bueller's Day Off had slimes on it. Okay, so that in pure morality stance, that's no worse. Animals died.
And it's not like they were just killed for the sake of just killing and it went to waste.
Right. Now, is it filmed as a form of entertainment? No, that's a little bit different. Is it done humanely? Honestly, no. That turtle probably lived a better life than a factory farm chicken, even with its gruesome demise. And that's just the reality we live in. The amount of rape in this film is unparamount to anything I've ever seen. I've seen Last House on the Left. I've seen like Three from Hell,
Spit on Your Grave,
Devil's Advocate,
shit, yeah.
and all that. Right, like there's lots of films that do that, but this is time and time again. And again, when we're dealing with not honestly knowing what's real in this film, we're talking about tribes people, and we have no fucking clue how many of them are actors. We don't know who got paid. We don't know to what level the director said, okay, keep rolling, do this, do that. Because the guy was fucking twisted. Let's call a spade a spade. Like, to get these reactions and emotions doing something vile and then filming it and using it later on in your film because it was a really good take, like, that's fucked.
Yep.
But the other side of that is, isn't that why we watch these films? Like, to get that vile, visceral reaction out of you, that uncomfortable nature. Like, Devil's Advocate, or not Devil's Advocate,
Rejects?
Yeah, Devil's Rejects is one of my favorite films. And it has scenes that make you extremely uncomfortable. And this film, I felt, did the same thing to me. Paired with the fact that I think the story is amazing, and I'd love to just see that story without all this other stuff in it. The idea of going into the jungle and these people that you start loving, and then all of a sudden realize that they're extremely flawed human beings and are actually pretty visceral and vile. And from a gore aspect, there can be no better gore than literal animal fucking intestines. Like, when they filmed the very first zombie movies, that's what they were chewing on. They were chewing on livers and intestines that they got them in the butcher shop. And that was the peak of gore, and it still is to this day. Like, now we try to replicate that as much as we can with silicone and prosthetics and hot foam and all these other things that we do to try and make it look like actual gore. So, I think I've said everything I need to say about this film. I'm going to go on the other spectrum and call this movie an X, because it is the most horrifying thing I have ever seen. It is the ultimate experience in grueling terror, in my opinion. And that doesn't mean I recommend you watch it. If anything, I suggest you do not watch this film. I went into it thinking there's no way this film can reach the notoriety it has. And just watching the film alone, if there was no internet at the time, I'd probably say, yeah, no, you're right. But knowing what I have read, assuming the majority of it is correct, about how this film was made, blows my mind that can exist.
Yep.
Yeah.
Rated X.
Adam, go ahead. Adam,
Okay.
go ahead.
Okay. Here's the way that I feel about this movie. Getting into a little bit of a backstory here for a minute. I kind of described this to the guys. So, I have seen horror movies at a very, very young age, going from young age up, like some really good horror movies. This was one of those movies that we read about in Fangoria, me and my brother Dave. We read about it in Fangoria. The infamy was there. There was people talking about it all the time. And at the onset of the internet, back in the old dial-up days with really shitty web browsing, Netscape Navigator type shit, we came across a company in Ontario called Revoc Films. And what they did was they used to bring in banned films, and they were like laser discs, and they were VHS and everything else, and they made bootleg copies and they sold them at high price because you just couldn't import them or get them. It's not like today where I can just log onto a website and buy fucking Video Nasty movies like that. Cannibal Holocaust, you can probably pick up Sunrise Records nowadays, you know what I mean? But back then, you just couldn't. It was not just regularly available. So this company kind of did a small service to a lot of horror fans. I seen this movie for the first time at way too fucking young of an age. I will admit that. I was 15, 16 years old in that time period when I saw it. And my parents had no fucking clue that I was watching this movie. Me and my brother watched it, and it was one of those movies where we had heard the infamy, but until you see it, do you truly understand? Because as you guys probably understood going into this movie too, you've heard the infamy of this movie, the realism of things and the nastiness of it, and yeah, there's some real animal deaths, but you didn't know the extent until you actually witnessed it. And it was the same, but it was even less because we didn't have as much information back then. We just knew that this movie lived in infamy and was banned because of certain things. What's the worst that could appear on screen? Well, fuck me. You know what I mean? What you watch on this screen is pretty fucking bad in a lot of cases. But that being said, I'm a pretty desensitized fuck, to be honest. It's not like I sat there and giggled at a fucking turtle being killed. That is probably, in my opinion, the worst scene in the entire fucking movie. The animal cruelty itself is harsh. It really is. Like I said, I'm a carnivore. I agree entirely with what Josh said. You know, fucking bacon burger. Love it. Whatever, right? And it's all farm chicken McNuggets and all this kind of shit. But to see something occur and to hear that last breath, that last scream, that intense moment, and to know that they just filmed it, and it wasn't like it was a quick shot. It was fucking 5 minutes of ripping apart a turtle. You know, it wasn't just, okay, we chopped off its head and it cut. 5 fucking minutes. It was much. It was more than necessary in a lot of ways. Yeah. So if you take a lot of that and put it aside, you also still have the ever so consistent rape scenes and constant rape scenes. There's like 6 of them in this fucking movie. It's just nonstop with the adultery and the rape and everything else. And I understand that they're trying to get across the fact that there's it's a different life. It's a wild life and you know, it's the jungles and all this animalistic and everything else. And that's fine. It primal and it gets out there and that's truthful and everything else. At the core of this movie, though, there's one thing that I've always said, and this was the reason I created the ratings rated S for shit when I originally did. Rated S for shit! I'll do it. Was because at the core of a movie, I have to actually like something about it. What does the movie have that's redeemable in its qualities? One, I agree. The actual writing and the story behind this is fucking good. There's not much else like it in existence. Try to think of something that was original like that at that time. There's a lot of shit that's come afterwards, right? Even the homage when it comes down to the way that Eli Roth filmed The Green Inferno. Cannibal Ferox came out a year or so later, which actually starred like, you know, 1 or 2 of the same actors and shit. But this was something that hit a new precedence. Even with the way that he did it, that was fine. But it was an interestingly new concept, and it introduced us to a new world that none of us had really ever seen before. You know, the whole tribe and the Amazon and the Green Inferno. The story was good. The acting was as best as you can really get for the time period, in my opinion, especially for the fact that there was a lot of overdubbing that occurred. It was well done that way. Visually, the movie was filmed in a manner that made you feel the effects that they wanted you to feel. It made you squeamish. It did everything that you needed to with the visuals. And the fucking soundtrack is, I kid you not, one of my favorite soundtracks from old horror movies. That fucking opening scene where you just see the Amazon and from the plane, and it's in my opinion, it is almost unparalleled the way that it makes you feel. Because if you go back and watch that opening scene again after having seen the movie, that song now makes you queasy. It didn't when you first seen it. It was kind of almost uplifting. But now it is ingrained in you, and it kind of makes you like, you know what's coming up. And that song appears multiple times throughout the movie at the most awkward fucking stages in the movie too. So it did itself right. It did a lot of what it needed to do. The viral nature of the way that this guy incredibly put this together and everything else. The movie itself is not a bad movie. It's just it lives in infamy for the shit that he put on the screen. The live deaths and the continuous rapes and everything else. So I can't knock the movie itself. I gotta look at all the merits too. That being said, I've probably seen this movie more times than I'd like to admit. And maybe I'll even admit this. This was probably my 5th time seeing this movie. Now, that's probably nowhere near as somebody's going to watch this video and say, "Oh, I've seen it 20 fucking times. It's my favorite movie." Sure, good for you. You like that kind of shit. That's great. I seen it multiple times when I was young. It's almost like the first time I seen it, it fucking the mystery of it was like I had to see it again. And then I seen it a couple times, as an adult, kind of like the curiosity years later. And then once again, seeing it, rehashing on this for this episode. This movie, I'm gonna go as far as saying, is a PG. It's pretty good. Because overall, would I recommend it? And this is where I had a hard time thinking about it. I would give this movie an R. But by the definition of giving it an R, I can't recommend it. This is one of those movies that I literally look at people and say, if you're looking for something fucked up and you just want that feeling, and you've never seen it, go ahead. Now you can put that notch in your belt and say that you've witnessed what the horror community considers to be one of the most vile films ever made. Done. Do I recommend that horror fans just go and fucking watch this movie? No. I don't.
This is not a film for your average fucking Jason, Freddy, Chucky lovers.
Oh, I love Annabelle. No, you're not going to want to watch this movie. You're not going to want to watch this movie. I love Annabelle. No, there's no fucking creepy dolls in this movie. There's just creepy other shit. Okay, done. No, you're right. So I can't go as far as saying recommended because I can't recommend the movie. I can't bring myself to say you gotta fucking watch this movie. I just can't. So with everything else, I give it a PG. I'm done with it. It's PG. Will I ever watch this movie again? I'm probably going to be stupid, and in 10 years I'm going to say, was that movie really that bad? And I'm going to watch it, I'm going to fuck, that was bad. That was bad, yeah. It's like, was that stove really hot when I put my hand on it? Yes! It's going to burn me again, folks, and that's what's going to happen. And it's that love-hate relationship that I have with the horror genre. But that being said, the one last thing I will say is the reason why I have to give it the merits like that is because there are a ton of shock movies out there that were made strictly for shock. This is one of them. But it was a well-made shock movie. There's another movie that's very infamous that's getting an unrated cut right now that has dethroned Cannibal Holocaust as the most vile film ever made. And it's a stupid fucking movie that has no merits. It was literally made with shock factor. It was terribly acted, terribly filmed, garbage. And for anybody who wants to know, and yes, this is my opinion, shit on me all you want, a Serbian film is the name of the movie. When you go into any of the horror movie groups on Facebook, once a fucking week, somebody goes, I need to watch a Serbian film. Or what's a Serbian film really like? And everybody starts jumping on, and there's a whole bunch of really edgy horror fans that just go, oh, it's the best fucking movie ever made because it's so shocking and vile. No. The shock and vile factor doesn't make it a good movie. It's the movie that surrounds that makes it a good movie. Those shock and vile aspects are something that will elevate the movie further. Serbian film doesn't do it at all. Cannibal Holocaust does, though. There's a difference, people. There's a difference. This was a bit of an artistic film compared to that. So,
is there a cut of this film that exists with the unnecessary animal abuse and some of the sexual assault scenes removed?
You will not find it, because what happened was, when this movie was released on home video way back when, in the countries that still allowed it, they did cut it. And it was cut down a lot. But it kind of disappeared from the world for years until it came back again. And at no point did anybody say, I want the fucking cut version, because the movie was so much, like, there was so much lore and it lived in so much infamy that everybody just said, I want to see exactly why this movie was banned and exactly why this movie is infamous. So you won't find a cut version. It would probably be a fan project maybe somewhere where somebody goes in and manually cuts it, but that would be about it. So that's what I have to say, folks. We've had a good discussion on this. Do I say good discussion? Dare I say good discussion?
Horrific discussion.
But I mean, this might be the nastiest movie that we ever watch for this show, and if that's the case, then we've hit that and we've touched it and we've hit the basis for it, and good job to us for coming out and talking about it, because people like to know. So that being said, thank you everybody for joining us tonight on this episode, and don't forget to check us out on Facebook. We put out new content every week, ladies and gentlemen. Facebook, Misunderstood Our Company. We're also on YouTube, Misunderstood Our Company. Like, share, subscribe, and enjoy the content that we have. Thank you very much again. We're also putting out audio versions of all these episodes in all the major talkie versions of these episodes on all the major podcasting platforms, including but not limited to Google Play, iTunes, Spotify, and Amazon Music. We're also on Patreon. Open up your hearts and your wallets. And until next time.
Okay, shrinks aren't free, guys. Like, we got.
Yeah,
Josh
exactly.
and Aaron really need that at this point. Until next time, Josh.
This film is honestly a badge of notoriety and honor in the horror community, and I think me and Aaron earned that little badge for our little Boy Scouts.
You should get little badges made for certain movies that are infamous that you've watched. Yeah. Aaron.
I don't mean any pun by this, but this movie definitely gets under the skin. That's all I have to say.
And Tim.
Stay safe. Stay spooky.
See you next time, folks.
Good night.